The grading system. Why do we keep crying over a number, a letter on a piece of paper? Why is it that we care so much? And are grades really that important? Hello everyone, my name is Sharie, and today I'm going to be sharing with you my relationship with the grading system whilst giving you a new perspective on grades and the right mentality to go about them. Because I'm not gonna lie, grades can cut deep sometimes, and it's hard to know the right way to put up with it and to handle it. So to begin with, the big question is, are grades really important? And the answer to that question is yes, they are important to society. Grades are super important to almost everyone we come across, whether it's our teachers, our family members, and even our friends that encourage us or praise us when we get a good grade. The better question to that is, are grades important to you? Because you have a choice. Even though everyone around you is making grades seem like the biggest deal in the world, it's still up to you to decide whether it's important. I've realized over time that yes, whilst grades do have their purpose of giving a slight indication of your status in the class and on that test, there are so many other things that are much more important than grades. I've learned how to detach myself fully from them. And with that, I'm going to be giving you guys 6 mindset shifts to help develop your new mentality toward grades. Mindset shift number 1. No one is lower or higher than you, despite what number or result they get. This might be contrary to popular belief because we often look down on others that fail and praise people that get the highest marks in the class. But I want to ask you a question. What's wrong with failure? Why isn't failure normalized? Like, we're human beings. We're bound to make mistakes, and there are so many other factors that lead into taking that test that might have led us to failure. We bring ourselves and others down so much because of that, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. And yes, you might have failed once, but that doesn't stop you from improving, and that shouldn't discourage you from trying to improve. In fact, if you got perfect on every single test, you'd never learn from your mistakes. It would be low-key boring. And it's the same vice versa. We praise people so much for getting high marks. Just because someone is getting the highest marks, it does not mean they're the smartest in the class. They might be the smartest at taking test papers, they might be the smartest at that subject maybe, but it doesn't mean they're the smartest. That's when I started thinking, what if I just believe that we're all smart and capable? Yes, smart at different things, but smart in our own ways. And once I started realizing that, I started to see the potential in everyone. And once you start shifting your mind to realizing, actually, they're not lower than me for getting that lower mark. Because you know what? We're all smart in our own ways, and if they failed that test, it doesn't mean they can't get better at it. And if they did so good at that test, it doesn't mean that they're the perfect person, because they're not. No one is. And I just started to see the potential in everyone, and that helped me see the potential in myself. Mindset shift number 2. We all have our own strengths and weaknesses, and in that case, we all have our own different intelligences. I think there's a intelligence test, where it talks about our different intelligences. Like, some people are really good at abstract thinking, problem solving, whilst others are just like really creative. That's intelligent. There are different kinds of intelligences, guys, and some of the intelligences might unfortunately not be tested at school, but it doesn't mean that they're not as powerful. We all have our own strengths and weaknesses, and no, don't think to yourself that you only have weaknesses. That's such a lie. I know you're strong at something, and you might not have discovered it yet, but you are, so don't doubt yourself about that. I also questioned myself, if I have my own strengths and weaknesses, why am I expecting myself to be perfect in everything? Why am I expecting myself to get the same marks I do in English as I do in math? Like, they're completely different subjects. So why do I expect myself to be pitch perfect in every single one of them? But I want to tell you this. Just because you have flaws, it does not mean you can't improve at them. And I'm a living example of that. One of my weaknesses is that, first of all, I'm a slow learner, and math, I was okay with it up until we started calculus and all that kind of heavy problem solving stuff. I realized that a lot of the people in my class thought in a really abstract way, because math is an abstract subject. And I realized, wait, I don't think like that. I'm a very visual learner, and I'm honestly more creative. Even though I don't have that abstract mathematical problem-solving mind, I still managed to improve math in my last 2 years of high school and get a solid mark. It might not have been the top mark, but it was an improvement for me. And learning to take our flaws, embrace it, and try and improve it is just such a good way of growth. Just because it's easier for that person beside you doesn't mean you can't get there too. You can. Anybody can rewire their brain. And with that, I stopped trying to compare myself to everyone. Because if everyone has their own brain, their own functioning brain, and everyone thinks differently, why am I trying to compete with them? And that leads into mindset shift number 3. I am my own competition. You are your own competition. I know that school teaches us that everything is a competition. We're all trying to get into this good uni. We're all trying to get this good ATAR. It's a competition, it's a rank. I know, contrary to popular belief again. But if we have that mentality, then we're just going to be constantly comparing ourselves to everyone else. We're going to be constantly conscious of what they have and what they have. Yeah, they're lower than me, they're higher than me. If we're comparing, somebody else's success doesn't take away from your own. I'm going to repeat that again. Somebody else's success does not take away from your own. Because you can be on top of the class, you can be ranked 10th in the class, and you can still get to where you want to go. Sometimes it might be a longer path, sometimes it might be a little bit harder, but you can still get there. And so why are we competing against that person next to us? Because every single person has their own dreams, their own path. And so with those dreams and with that goal, we have our own standards. We make our own standards for ourselves. If our standard for ourselves is to be on top of the class because we want to get the scholarship, that's okay. That's your standard. But if your standard is to get this 80% ATAR to get into engineering, then why are you comparing your standard to that person's standard? Because that person is aiming for something else. That person has a different standard for themselves. And so why are we trying to compete against them? Like, their success is not trying to compete with our success. We can both be successful in our own ways. Just because they got higher grades or you got higher grades, it doesn't take away anyone else's success. It doesn't take away the possibility of reaching your own dreams. Because you have your own dreams, they have their own dreams. And so in a way, you are your own competition. When I realized that I'm competing against myself for my own dreams, and I started looking at my own path as my own path, and everybody else's path as their own thing, I started focusing more of my own improvement, and I stopped being so conscious of what marks everyone else got. That's their marks, that's their life, that's their goals, that's their standards. What are yours? And that's what you have to decide. Mindset shift number 4. Fall in love with learning. I genuinely feel like grades have completely stripped away the actual joy of learning. We all focus on getting that number on a piece of paper that we forget to love being in the classroom and learning about things. Like, remember in primary school when we would go to school and just be excited to learn because there were no tests, no assessments? I want you to get back to that point again. And I know it's difficult because everyone around us seems to be fighting for that mark, be fighting for whatnot, blah, 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 blah. But who cares what they're doing? I want you to fall in love with the subjects that you're learning. In a way, loving the subject will just naturally give you better marks because you're actually studying for fun. You're not studying for that mark. You're not studying and dreading it. You're studying because you enjoy the content. An example of this for me is physics. 2 weeks into doing physics ATAR, I was genuinely thinking of quitting. I was like, I don't like physics, this seems so difficult and everything, blah, 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 blah. But then I had the biggest mindset shift ever. I was like, wait a minute, what if I learned to love physics? What if I kind of just consider it a little bit? And I began to genuinely enjoy the subject so much because I saw the beauty in physics. From mid-boring things like heating and cooling, to quantum physics, to special relativity and time dilation, I learned to enjoy it all. I don't know, I just learned to be curious and interested in it. I just genuinely was like, you know what? I love learning this subject. I'm here to learn, and I'm not here to get the top marks. And once I started shifting my brain that way, I stopped caring about what they got. And I started being like, okay, this test challenged me. This test pushed me to learn more about physics. And these mistakes will ultimately just allow me to learn more and learn from my mistakes. And with that, that leads to mindset shift number 5. Detaching yourself from the number. This one is getting harder and harder because it's hard to ignore the number, especially when we're curious and we want to know what we got. Last year, I would literally get a test paper back and I wouldn't even calculate the percentage. And math doesn't click like that with me, so I couldn't just calculate the percentage in my head. I'd see the mark, I'd flip over, and that's it. Like, I would genuinely forget what I got a day later. Like, that's how detached I was from the mark. Like, I just never knew. I'd kind of know the range, but I'd forget the exact mark because I completely just didn't look at the number. I didn't even look at the test result. I just flipped into the test paper. And you know what I looked at? The first thing that I would look at when I was handed a test paper back was my mistakes. Not the number at the front of the paper, not the result. No, my mistakes. Because instead of asking, what did I get? What result did I get? What grade is this? I asked myself, how can I improve from this? Rather than looking at my mark and seeing a 60 or a 50 and being like, oh, I'm so dumb. I'd look at my mistakes and I'd see my mistakes and I'd be like, okay, how can I improve from that? And having that shift of change really helped me have a healthier mindset on my grades. Because I started loving to learn and loving learning from my mistakes, that I focus on improving rather than focusing so much on the number. The final mindset shift is mindset shift number 6. Find something else to attach your worth to. A lot of us watching this have been constantly praised for achievements, for grades, for whatnot. And with that, we kind of attach our own worth and attach who we are to our achievements. And we kind of seek that validation, that academic validation, because we were praised for that academic success when we were younger. But you're a little older now. You can decide what to attach your worth to. And it might be difficult at first, but you have a choice. Because people say grades don't define your worth all the time. But the real question is, if grades don't define your worth, what does? And that's something that you have to figure out. Is it your personality? Is it the hobbies that you love? Is it what you love? Introduce yourself without your achievements. When you take all that away, who are you? Whether it's defining yourself by your faith, which personally for me is the way that I go. I define myself by the fact that I'm a child of God and I'm created in His image and likeness. And so no matter what grade I get, I know that I'm still worth it. That's my personal way to define myself. I encourage you to find your own way. I'm going to end off these 6 mindset shifts with a single challenge. My challenge for you is to not tell anyone your grades, whether you get a high grade or a low grade. Because people often don't tell their lowest marks, but they tell their highest marks, which means that they haven't completely detached themselves from the number because they're still defining their worth by that high mark. But if you really want to detach yourself from the number, I challenge you to not tell anyone your number. Because first of all, that allows you to only compete with yourself because you're the only one that knows your number. No one else knows it. Second of all, that teaches you to detach yourself from the number because you don't feel the need to say it. Because why does the number matter? Why does everyone need to know your score? I didn't tell anyone any of my grades. And that was the biggest relief for me because I didn't have to tell anyone when I got a low mark, and yet I didn't tell anyone when I got a high mark. They just knew me as someone that didn't tell. And there was a sense of power in that because they'll never know. I wish you all the best for this new school year. Despite that number that you got, despite that end score, know that you're worth it. And don't compare yourself to that person beside you. Thank you guys so much for watching. Binge watch my old videos, and I will see you all in my next one.